Hey guys, welcome back. Just a quick heads up, I apologize if I sound kind of weird in this video. It's just that it's allergy season right now and I'm very congested, but I hope that doesn't stop you from enjoying the video. Today's gonna be a fun one. I've talked about scores of infuriating abilities so far, from reset mechanics to 3-hit passives to point and clicks to the badly designed series, but part of me feels like if I asked everyone what their least favorite type of abilities to go up against are, it wouldn't be any of them. In League, you've no doubt encountered a champion with an attack that specializes in dealing the finishing blow, usually after a long drawn out fight or at the tail end of their combo. Sometimes it might just be part of their normal rotation, other times it's their definitive last shot at taking you out before they've exhausted most if not all their damage. Whatever the case may be, executes have been a mainstay within the game's landscape for quite some time now, and it's incessantly debated about by anyone who has an opinion on this game. Some say it's the most frustrating thing to deal with, while others believe there are worse types out there, and this discussion has been brought up as new champions have been increasingly appearing with this very property. It's one of the more frequently requested topics I get on this channel, so let's go over them as a group, along with the question, are they unfair for the game? Now, over a year ago, sometime around March 2021, this was when I had only like 40k subs. I made a small little rant video about Cho'Gath's ultimate where I said that it wasn't an execute despite everyone saying it is, since it didn't ensure a guaranteed kill. It was just coincidentally used to deal the killing blow due to gaining bonus health if it does. So first things first, let's be boring for 5 seconds and go through semantics for a moment, because the term execute is actually an umbrella term used to describe 3 different types of attacks. First, there are the actual executes, which entail any ability that kills a unit by dealing 100% of their current health as true damage that also destroys shields before applying that damage. These are the ones that you tend to see doing 9,999 damage with a white critical hit mark. Draven's Whirling Death, Pike's Death from Below, and Urgot's Fear Beyond Death. Very much death. There's also the Collector and of course the ever so frightening Elder Dragon buff. If we're splitting hairs, these 5 are the only true executes in the game because they're the only ones that guarantee the target or targets will die on contact if the conditions are met, regardless of how much health they have or whatever. That is, unless they're invulnerable such as Kale's ult or death immune such as Kindred's ult. So if we're going by the literal definition of execute, it's just these 5. 2 other groups of abilities are usually thrown into the mix though, one being damage that scales off of the enemy's missing health, and the other being damage that increases based on the enemy's missing health. Sounds redundant, so let me explain. The former group entails any ability that directly interfaces with the enemy's health bar, such as Garen's Demacian Justice. This attack does a base amount of true damage plus a portion of the enemy's missing health, meaning against high max health targets like Sion or Zac, this attack will do far more than against low max health targets like Yuumi or Soraka. Effectively, they will still die at the same relative percentage of health, but the damage itself is not uniform. Does that make sense? The latter group does increase damage against low health opponents as well, but instead of calculating bonus damage diametrically, it uses their missing health as a reference and instead increases damage by a flat amount. An example of this is Lee Sin's Resonating Strike. Its damage increases by up to 100% or double damage based on the target's missing health. In other words, no matter who he's up against, tank or squishy, Resonating Strike can do up to 300 base plus 200% bonus AD physical damage. On the subject of this ability, it actually used to be part of the first category prior to version 8.15, where it would do base damage plus 8% of the target's missing health. Then in that patch, it was changed to increase the base damage equal to missing health. The idea is more or less the same. Both types of attacks are stronger the lower health their targets have when they land, but one deals bonus percent health damage, thus making it more effective against tanks, while the other deals bonus flat damage, thus making it more effective against squishies. I like to call these abilities finishers as they technically don't guarantee a kill, but are designed to be used for the kill. There is a third category of finishers, which encompasses Evelyn's ultimate, Pantheon's Q, Kog'Maw ultimate and stuff, but basically these deal modified damage if the enemy is below a certain amount of health. So it's either A or B, not an incremental thing. I know the specifics are kind of confusing, but the general idea of all these attacks is that they're meant to kill you. As for abilities like Darius or Cho'Gath ult, those are merely big damage nukes. They're neither finishers nor executes, just a lot of damage that offers an additional benefit if it kills a target. What's ironic about executes and finishers is that, contrary to popular belief, they're not the highest damaging abilities in the game. Rather, the circumstances in which you receive that damage make it look like it does a lot. 4% missing health finishers, they're definitively weaker than any attack that does a comparable amount of maximum health, since it only does a lot of damage at lower health thresholds, where the target will most likely die from any attack. Let's assume there's one attack that does 30% missing health damage and another that does 30% max health, and we have a target with 1000 max health. In order for the missing health attack to do the same damage as the max health one, the target would have to have literally 0 HP because 30% of 1000 missing health is 300 damage, making it impossible for it to do as much damage as the max health attack since the target would have to already be dead. To account for that, finishers whose base damage increases according to missing health tend to have a bottom threshold, such as Akali's Perfect Execution, where it's designed to deal maximum damage if the enemy has 30% health or less, as opposed to scaling down to 0. Regardless though, what makes them so threatening despite there being other attacks that do a lot of damage all the same? For one, it's important to consider who these attacks are given to and how they're applied. The class with the most amount of percent max health damage sources are Juggernauts and Tanks, but as you know, they're not very fast in either mobility or DPS, so it's okay to give them very strong persistent damage. Most executes are tied to champions with extremely high damage, especially front-loaded. This allows them to get you into a situation where they would have easy access to a reasonably optimal amount of bonus damage to finish what's left of your health. Also, to account for missing health almost never dealing its actual maximum damage, the numbers are generally higher. Jinx's Super Mega Death Rocket exclamation point does up to 35%. Garen's Demacian Justice also does 35%. Rex's Void Rush 30%, Viego base 25%, and more with AD. Even for non-ultimate abilities, they can do a lot. Phil 6 is 22%, Jin's 4th shot is 25%, so on and so forth. In contrast, maxed health abilities rarely go above 15% unless they're ultimates or super late game abilities. They're also usually attached to damage over time or delayed applications such as Mordekaiser's passive or Vi's denting blows respectively. That's another thing, executes tend to be very easy to land since they're either point and click, come out instantly, or the user has a way to make it very hard to miss. As mentioned earlier, executes have been present throughout League's history since pretty much day one, but it's been appearing in greater frequency among new champions. 2015 is characterized as a significant turning point for champion design where every new release is a nuanced take on their design archetype. Coincidentally, out of the 25 finisher type abilities, 14 of them, including reworks, have been instituted after 2015. Granted, if you look at the max health category, which is way freaking bigger, a good chunk of that section comes from new releases and VGUs as well. I would say that the contention regarding executes reached a boiling point with the advent of Pyke. He was the first champion ever to have a true execute type ability. Everything before him was a finisher. Being a support only exacerbated this. While there were traces of carry supports like Zyra and Brand, the idea of a support belonging to the assassin subclass was completely unheard of, much less having an ultimate that had the potential to not only dispatch multiple opponents at once but reset on takedown. After him came other notorious executes or finishers, Akali, Viego, Akshan, and to a lesser extent things like the Collector and Elder Dragon. It seemed like almost everything in the game was heading in the direction of wiping you off the face of the earth, which ushered along a very hyper-aggressive damage one-shot oriented meta that's been spanning close to 4 years now. Incidentally, I don't know when you'll be seeing this, but assuming nothing changes in the upload schedule, patch 12.10 will have been released around this time, which was aimed at putting a stop to the one-shot meta, though at the time of writing this, I'm not sure how much the increased base damage will actually affect things. Back to the topic at hand though. Now that we've laid down all the information, it's time to answer the question of the video. Are executes unfair for the game? The short answer, no. The long answer is, like any mechanic in League, context is very important. The idea of an execute or finisher in and of itself is no different from an ability that does a high amount of damage. If you were to compare Jin's Curtain Call to a similar global ultimate such as Lux or Xerath, all three of them are designed to blast you to Kingdom Come from a far distance even though only one of them has an execute-like property. The thing that's currently bothering a lot of players, myself included, is the ease of access of those abilities, especially when it can be used unconditionally or double as something else. Going back to Jin's Curtain Call for a moment, I don't think anyone has any problems with it doing bonus damage against low health targets. First, it's a skill shot, thus being harder to land the farther away his target is. Second, there's a very clear indication given to his soon-to-be victim that death is imminent if they don't do something about it, be it evasive maneuvers or standing behind a more beefy or healthier teammate. There's very evident counterplay Jin's opponent could exercise to prevent their demise. Ultimately, it comes down to whether or not the would-be target of an execute or finisher has the agency to prevent or avoid losing their life. And if you remember what I said earlier, many of these abilities don't really have that element of counterplay at all. At least, not one that doesn't require a specific item or tool to use. See, one of the reasons why people hate suppression so much is because there's unironically nothing you can do to escape the attack by your own hand except through Quicksilver Sash. Suppression ignores Cleanse and Mikhail's Blessing, the two things all about cleansing hard crowd control. Unless your name is Olaf or Alistar, you have no choice but to pay the tax, as they say, 1300 gold down the drain just so Malzahar or Skarner can't screw you over. Yes, there's Warwick, but you can sidestep his ult. Point being, a mechanic is only as healthy as the countermeasures available in response to it. Going by that logic, two of the three champions with executes are rather fairly designed. Draven's Whirling Death is not only very easy to dodge, especially from a far distance, but he needs a high amount of passive stacks to execute you. Though since he cashes in on stacks per kill, the likelihood of those stacks amounting to a lot is very small. Urgot's Fear Beyond Death only executes you if you drop below a quarter after landing the drill. He's able to guarantee landing it with disdain, but to do that he has to be in point-blank range. Sniping down a target from afar with Urgot's ult is a lot harder than it looks. That leaves us with Pyke. What makes his ultimate frustrating is not really the execute itself, it's the fact that he can get within striking distance of his target way too easily thanks to Ghost Water Dive and Phantom Undertow. In fact, his entire kit is engineered to make landing his ultimate virtually freelong. The same holds true for finishers as well. There are some fairly designed ones, but a lot of unfairly designed ones. For Garen, since Demacian Justice's true damage, you essentially die if you drop below 30% health regardless of who you're playing. The number goes up to almost 50% for squishy targets. In his defense, like Urgot, he has to literally be in your face to use it, and in 5v5 teamfights, unless he flanks the backline, it's not as scary as it looks. What about Akali's perfect execution? With a myriad of gap closers, it's very difficult to escape her threat radius, not to mention, the finisher component is a long-range dash at blinding speed. In many cases, your only choice against her is to stand and fight, automatically putting you at a disadvantage unless you're someone who just happens to counter her kit. For attacks like Riven's Wind Slash, Veigar's Primordial Burst, Rek'Sai's Void Rush, Evelyn's Last Caress, Viego's Heartbreaker, there isn't that much you can do against these types of abilities, and all of them can be casted immediately, so the moment they see you and you're low health, it's as simple as pressing the R button and goodbye. There needs to be adequate counterplay for these types of abilities, and no, just because they're not point and click doesn't mean they have counterplay. Not everyone has instant repositioning tools, and Flash isn't up all the time. Among other things, part of why everyone plays hypermobile champions is to have the speed to dodge these types of attacks. Also, requiring the target to be at low health isn't really an excuse for counterplay either. Almost everyone with an execute or finisher can 100 to 0 you with their base kit. If Viego can waste your entire health bar in one cast of Spectral Maw, you can't say with a straight face that the counterplay to Heartbreaker is not being low HP. And for some reason, a lot of executes can be used as escapes as well. Evelyn's ultimate is a finisher on top of on-target ability on top of teleporting backwards. There's little punishment to whiffing certain moves, which defeats the purpose of them being high risk, high reward. Oftentimes in video games, the stronger something is, the harder it is to use or the more exposed are left afterwards if the attack fails. In Super Smash Bros, aside from, a couple exceptions, powerful moves like smash attacks are slow to start up and leave you wide open to counterattack. In Pokemon, most attacks with over 120 power have a high chance to miss or come with heavy drawbacks, such as being unable to move for a turn. In FPS games, guns are usually balanced by trading off one attribute for another, power for range, rate of fire for accuracy, what have you. The balance of power and safety aren't inversely proportional to one another in League. There are strong moves that can be instantly cast with no setup or risk to the character. In that sense, despite not being a finisher, I actually think something like Darius' Noxian Guillotine is the best way to design stuff like this. The damage scaling aspect is separated from the actual ability. Nidalee is also a good one. Takedown has damage amplification on its own, but to really sting with this attack you need to trigger Prowl first using her Javelin or Bushwhacks. Either way, there's a delay of sorts. Kindred's Mounting Dread, Kasta's Caustic Wounds, all of these give ample warning beyond the casting animation. And on that note, I actually like what they did with Akshan's Comeuppance. Its point and click activation is offset by the need to channel it for 2.5 seconds to get the max number of shots, and its very long target range is offset by the fact that other entities can intercept it. However, he can also manipulate his positioning to counter yours using Flash or Heroic Swing, so it creates an interesting minigame of sorts. Essentially, for an execute or finisher to be healthy, there needs to be some universal way for a champion to respond to them. Delayed activation such as Kindred, visual clarity such as Jhin, or skill expressive prerequisites such as Nidalee's Takedown. If there isn't any, then it's an unfairly designed ability. So in your opinion, what's an example of an execute that's well designed and one that's poorly designed? Let me know in the comments down below, as well as your thoughts on if you think there are too many of these abilities or not. With all that said, we're gonna end things off here for today, so if you enjoyed the video, it would be awesome if you could leave a like and subscribe. Consider following me on Twitter, joining my Discord server, and checking out my other ability discussions after this one. For now, thanks so much for watching. Again, I apologize for how I sounded in this video, but I hope I can look forward to seeing you again soon in the next one. Take care.